There are times in our life when we do need to quit something. And sometimes it's temporarily and sometimes it's permanent. And so I just encourage you to kind of think about that as we go through Lent. A lot of people will give up something for Lent so they can focus on their spiritual journey. So they can focus on their relationship with God. And it can just help us focus, or maybe refocus is a better way to put it. But it's a time when we meditate on what God has done for us and what He is teaching us. Maybe give up something so we can gain more of what God has for us. In a sense, it's really similar to the New Year, isn't it? The New Year, we do like to plan our resolutions. Well, some of us do. We plan our resolutions and we say, I want to be better this year. I want to do something different this year. This is my goal for the year. Well, Lent can be the same way for our spiritual lives. It's kind of that new beginning. As we go on this journey together, we're going to spend time on the crossroads, those paths that lead us to Calvary in Christ. So over the next few weeks, I guess it's 6 weeks, I think is what I counted. Over 6 weeks, we're going to look at the roads that lead us to Calvary. We're going to go through Israel's history. We're going to look at the preparations God was making in individual lives and in the lives of the Israelites as a whole. How God was preparing the way for Christ. How He brought that into being. And then on Passion Week, we're going to focus on the cross and the tomb, which is only appropriate. And then finally, afterwards, for a couple of weeks, we're going to look at some roads that went away from the cross as we start to see the gospel being spread and what that means for us now, 2,000 years later. So that's kind of the plan for the next 9 weeks, I think it is. Does that sound right, Nick?
I think so.
Okay, about 9 weeks. That's kind of our plan. That's our journey. We're going to journey through this as we come to the cross and as we go out into the world and the hope that comes with all that. During the height of the Roman Empire, well, actually I take that back. I did a little more research. This came around actually during the Middle Ages, but there was a saying that was, all roads lead to Rome. Anybody heard that one? I think we probably have. All roads lead to Rome. Why is that? Why did they say that? Well, at the height of the Roman Empire, they made roads, lots of them. And those roads radiated from Rome in Italy. And they went all over the Roman Empire. Obviously, it made troop movements easier. But it also made trade and commerce easier. Because one of the Roman Empire's big things was they loved culture. They loved philosophy and culture and art and all this stuff. And they wanted to make sure that it got everywhere and everywhere got there. Does that make sense? So all roads lead to Rome. In other words, this is the center of our empire. We want to make sure everything can pass here, through here, and to other places, and everything's connected. If you got on a road built by the empire and you started walking in the right direction, eventually you would end up in Rome. Any road. Didn't matter how far away you were. Eventually you would end up in Rome. In a very real sense, every one of our lives, every one of the journeys, the spiritual journeys we are on, is like those roads. Every road, and I say this in full faith, every road leads to the cross. What we do at the cross is our decision. But God leads every person to the cross. God leads every person to a moment of decision. God leads every person to know Him, but we decide what we do with that moment, that knowledge. And so that's kind of where I'm starting with this whole concept of the crossroads this morning. There is only one way to heaven. I'm not saying there's multiple ways to heaven because there's only one way. It is Jesus Christ, our Savior. That is the only way we get to heaven. But we may start on different places. We may start on different roads. But eventually we get there, and the one question we're going to have to answer is, what did we do with Christ? Sorry, I got lost in my notes. It happens once in a while. Today we're going to start our journey back at one of the first times God reveals himself to a man. And you'll notice I'm calling him today Abram because this is before he was changed to Abraham. This is the early days of Abram. This is the time when he is first called. And we're going to learn today about Abram, his journey, how God started that, and how he learned from it. Because our journey is about learning. And following God is going to be a journey of learning. Following God is learning. So Genesis chapter 12 is where we're starting today. Genesis chapter 12. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household, to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And I love this. And they arrived there. That's important. Setting out on a journey is one thing. Getting there is another, right? But the Lord appears to Abram and says, "Leave everything you know and go somewhere that I'm not even telling you the whole place, not the whole plan. I just want you to follow me." Following God is learning. It's learning a lot of things. That journey is about trust. That journey that we walk with God is about trust. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." You don't get anywhere if you don't move your feet. There's also another proverb or old riddle or ask, how do you eat an elephant? The answer is one bite at a time. I hope you got a big stomach too, but how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. We don't have to eat the whole thing in one gulp. We don't have to do the whole journey in one step. We just have to start putting one foot in front of the other. Abram's journey was very much the same. God called him and his family to leave their home, to leave their country, to leave their culture, to leave the things that they knew, that they were familiar with, that they were comfortable with, and to go into another country. And he didn't give Abram all the details. How many of you like to know the whole trip itinerary route before you go on a trip? Yeah. Why is that? Because we like to know what we're getting into. How many of you budget for a trip? Plan out everything. Meals are going to be this much, and rooms going to be this much. We're going up to Tammy's folks this week, and we've been budgeting. This is how much for rooms, and this is how much other money we'll have, and maybe we'll have enough for gas. And minor thing, you can always push it. But you plan these things, right? You want to make sure that you can not only start the journey but finish it, as in Abram's case. It says he arrived there. You plan those things, but sometimes we need to step out of faith too. And sometimes God doesn't give us the whole picture and say, here it is. Sometimes he gives us a little bit because maybe that's all we can chew. Maybe that's all we can swallow for right then. Maybe that's all we can handle at that point. Let me put this in a little more perspective too, because you need to understand that this journey that Abram was setting on was not just going from this town to the next town. He left from the land of Ur and the Chaldeans. That is the very edge of the Persian Gulf. That is the area that is in so much turmoil today, right, in the Middle East. But he left right there in the edge of the Persian Gulf. And Abram and his crew traveled 700 miles to the border of now present-day Iraq. They stayed there for a while. Then, through his life, they traveled another 700 miles to Syria. Then they traveled another 800 miles down to Egypt by the inland road. And then they traveled back into Canaan. Now, this wasn't all one trip. They did it in stages. There was different reasons why. But all in all, with his wife, his his nephew, their family, their servants, their animals, their possessions. They traveled about 3,000 miles. And we're not talking by moving van or by train. We're talking by foot. Maybe horse or camelback, I suppose, but mostly by foot. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine walking from Jonesport or Beals to Las Vegas? Because it's about that same distance. I looked it up. Google Maps says that's 3,020 miles. Who wants to take a trip? Leave the cars behind. We're going to walk. Anybody? I didn't think anybody jumped at that one. I really have no desire to go to Las Vegas anyways. But that is the similar distance that he traveled over his lifetime. And that blows my mind because I don't know about you, but I've never gone coast to coast. I know a couple of you have. But probably most of us have not. My grandmother used to do it. My grandfather was stationed in the Coast Guard out in Washington State for a few years. And she traveled back and forth to see her family in Long Island. She did that cross-country trip a few times. I just can't imagine it. But that was still in a car. Granted, it was an old car at that time, but it was a car. But then, a couple years ago, I got to meet a guy. Some of you remember Ralph Saban. His brother, I think his brother's name was Bill. I'm not sure, or it is Bill. But anyways, he was up at Riverside Camp a few years ago, and he had just finished a cross-country trip on a bicycle. Anybody want to join that ride? And it's interesting because this last week, another guy I know, his name's Paul, he just started a cross-country trip on a bicycle. He left from California. Last I knew, he was, I think, getting through Arizona, and he was battling headwinds. That was his big thing. But I don't know, a journey like that to me seems almost overwhelming. Granted, I'm not probably as fit as they are, but I just don't, I don't know, I don't like the idea of journeying that far for that long. It takes a little bit of faith, it takes a little bit of trust, but you still only accomplish it one day at a time, one mile at a time, one walk or step at a time, one pedal at a time. Every journey is the same. We can't do it all in one big step. We've got to break it down and just focus on what is right in front of us. And that's all God asks us to do. It takes trust because we never see the whole picture, but we know the one who does see the whole picture. And He's leading us forward. And so it takes trust to trust Him that He's leading us in the right direction. And sometimes there's even places where we run into a little bit of fog. We can't see the picture in front of us, can we? We can't see the next step, and God says, move forward, and we go, but I can't see it. You ever had that? That's an unsettling feeling when we're supposed to step forward and we don't know what's there. And yet God says, step forward, I've got you. Abram stepped out in faith, trusting that God had a plan and a purpose for his life and family. If you look at that, it actually sounds pretty good. God didn't lay out all the pieces, but He did say, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to make your name great. All peoples of the earth will be blessed by you. Sounds pretty impressive, doesn't it? Especially when you consider the fact that Abram never became a great leader of a nation. He never became what the world would say was a successful man, except that he did have possessions and wealth. But he never really was a great influencer. But what came from him was a nation, the nation of Israel. And what came from the nation of Israel was Jesus Christ, our Savior. And so God fulfilled that promise. All nations will be blessed through you. Abram just followed. He believed God, he believed the promises of God, and he followed in trust and faith. Sure, there was missteps along the way, but that was the times that Abram grew. Following God is learning. We learn to trust. We learn how God works. We learn about God. Because the other part of this is the journey is also about relationship. God doesn't call us and then leave us. Boy, wouldn't that be an awful thing? Now, wasn't it Joshua that said, if you don't go with us, don't send us? God calls us and then he goes with us. But we have to stay close in that relationship. You know, the best journeys are not about the destination. Yeah, that adds to it. Yeah, that's kind of fun. It makes memories and stuff. But think about it. Think about all the traveling you've ever done. Think about the places you've ever gone. Think about the best memories you ever had. Was it about the place, or was it about the people you were with at that place? I've got a confession to make here. And I know a couple people just came back from here, and they're probably going to be upset with me, but I don't like Florida. I know you guys like Florida, Laurel.
Well, I wouldn't want to live there.
Okay.
I like it in February, but I wouldn't like it in July.
Right.
And we went down in February one year, but we didn't go down to see Florida, per se. When I was a teenager, we went down to see my grandparents. And we had a great week with my grandparents. But by Wednesday of that week, I think we left on a Saturday, by Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, I told my father, I said, I want to see a real tree and I want to see a mountain. Because I'm getting tired of this flat place. Now, I was having fun swimming in February. We went to Busch Gardens. We met cousins we'd never met before. We saw dolphins on the inland waterway. We did all these different things. We collected shark's teeth, lots of shark's teeth. But the memories weren't so much about those things, it was who we were with. That's what I remember. If I'm going to go back to Florida, it's because I want to go back with somebody and do something. Not because I want to go back to Florida. I don't care if I ever go back to Florida. But if somebody that I really wanted to spend time with had a great idea to do something in Florida, I might say, yeah, that'd be all right. Saltwater fishing would be all right. Go down and get, sailfish, a shark, something like that. That'd be fun. But the journey is about relationships more than it is anything else. That's where we learn. That's where we grow. That's where we get experience. That's where we encourage one another on. Think about your family, your friends, even your neighbors and strangers that you journey with. Because we're all on this journey called life. And in this journey of life, part of that is our spiritual journey. We're all growing, learning, doing something with it. And it all interacts. It all comes together. Think about your favorite memories. If I asked you what your favorite memory was, what would come up in your mind? I'll just about guarantee that it has something to do with a person. Because there's very few memories that come up to my mind that I was alone for. There might be one or two. But usually it's a richer experience when you're with somebody. I like hunting and fishing, but I prefer to do it with somebody. Because it's just so much more fun to watch Lauren go through the ice. Well, actually, I didn't watch you go through the ice. I wish I had. It would have been so much more fun. Or to watch my sister hook my dad with her fishing line. Or, those are the things that come up when you think about this, right? When we tell stories about what we did, it's not about, I went out, I caught fish. It's the funny things that happened. It's the things that are memorable. Because those things implant themselves in our memory in a richer, fuller way. Abram set out with his family and God. And they traveled together. And you can bet that there was probably times along the way that somebody said, are we there yet? How much longer? I'm getting tired of following this camel. Come on, we've all traveled with kids. We know how this goes. There was probably some patience that had to be really tested on those trips. But they learned through those. Do you know, there are some Bible stories that follow up on this that we learn some things from Lot's perspective. Abram and Lot learned that they could go separate ways. Do you remember that? There was not enough land for all their flocks, and so they ended up parting ways. They didn't want to fight between them. But then Lot also learned that God expects a certain level of morality. Because Lot got into the wrong characters in Sodom and Gomorrah. We know how that turned out. Lot learned that God was serious and he would bring judgment. Abram learned a lot of things, but Abram and Sarah together learned that God always fulfills his promises, even when it's not humanly possible. When they ended up with a son. Even Hagar, the servant, learned that God cares for everybody after she was sent away with her baby because there was problems there. Well, I guess he was a young man then. There's problems there. God came and looked after her and cared for her. Everybody that was on that journey learned something because they were in a relationship with each other and they were somehow in a relationship with God. Their knowledge grew, their purpose grew, they grew. It's really the basic principle of discipleship. Discipleship doesn't happen by accident. It is purposeful. At least on God's part, it should be on ours. It is purposeful in what we do and how we do it and learning and growing together. It's purposeful in the fact that we get up on a Sunday morning and we come to Sunday school and to church. Maybe even come back for Sunday night. It's purposeful in that we go through the week and we open our Bible and we read, we pray, maybe we fast or meditate. Discipleship doesn't happen in a vacuum. We don't grow by not doing anything. We don't finish a journey by standing still and hoping the world will revolve around us. We have to move. And God has called us to move, to trust Him, to join together with Him, to seek after Him. It's that relationship that we have to build with Him. That's where it all starts. Following God is learning. I want to jump to the New Testament for a minute, just as we finish up here. No one greater at leading people than Jesus was. And yet, by many accounts, in the time frame he lived, he really wasn't. I mean, he influenced one nation, but he didn't influence the whole world. Look how far it's spread now. I mean, look how far it's spread through the disciples and the apostles and the early church, and just on and on. And we still have churches and missions and everything popping up all over the world. But if you look at Matthew chapter 10, this is where it started. Well, one of the places it started for one man. No, I take it back. I was going to use that passage. I was going to use one of the passages where he called Matthew. I changed it. I forgot. Matthew 10. This is what Jesus said about following him. Anyone who leaves their father or mother, loves their father or mother. Let me start again. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Think about the disciples. Jesus came to them individually and said, follow me, follow me, follow me. They left boats and nets. They left tax collectors' booth and money. Some of them left family and friends and hometowns, just like Abram did, to follow Christ. And he still has that same question today. Will you follow me? He still has that same statement. Come, follow me. He still calls each of us to follow him. And for each of us, it might be a little different what we have to give up to follow him. Sometimes we may not feel like we're giving up all that much, and sometimes we may feel like we're giving up everything. But that's where we have to trust. Is this relationship enough to give up everything to follow him? Whoever finds their life, whoever thinks they've got it all together, whoever has everything they'll ever need, he says is going to lose it. Whoever loses their life in this world, who puts this world behind them and follows me, They're the ones that can find true life, everlasting life, a full life. Following God is learning. And sometimes those lessons are hard. And sometimes those lessons seem to go on and on and on and on and on like a 3,000-mile trip by foot. But God asks us to trust and follow and build that relationship with Him and with others as we go together and we encourage one another. And so I just want to ask you this morning as we finish this, think about your journey. How is your journey going? How is your journey going? What do you need? What do you need to make your journey better? What do you need to make your journey more productive, more strong, more rich, to make more memories? Ask God. He will provide it. I've been on some journeys before where things did not happen the way that I planned. Anybody been there? The car broke down. Maybe it was just a flat tire. Maybe it was something more major. Somebody got sick. Maybe get somewhere expecting to stay in a place and find out that, oh, there's a huge convention in town. We have no place to stay. And you have to keep going and keep going. You ever gotten somewhere and realized, oh my word, the place I was going to is closed? I didn't realize that. I've been there before. I've been on a journey and taken a side trip and come back to the car and the keys are locked in it. That was on our honeymoon. I'll tell you about that sometime. There are all kinds of things that can happen on this journey. But God walks with us every step of the way if we are following Him. He asks us to trust. He asks us to grow in our relationship. So how is your journey? How's your journey going? I hope as we travel through Lent that maybe you focus on something you feel that you need from God and you pray in faith, believing that He will give it to you, because He will. James says whoever lacks wisdom, ask of God, and I think it applies to other matters as well. If God knows we need something and we're seeking it and desiring it, and He'll give it to us. So what do you need? Why don't we stand this morning, think about those questions, and let's just give our journey to God and pledge to go forward, stepping forward in faith, but asking Him for everything we need to finish. It says Abram arrived. That's what we want to do, is we want to arrive at the end of our journey. And hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Let's pray. Father, this morning we thank You for this journey that we're on. We thank You that You call us, but that You also provide for us. That we can trust You, that no matter what happens, whether it's in our plans or not, that You know what's going to happen. That You can prepare us and teach us and grow us. Father, help us to encourage each other. Help us to grow together, and as we travel together, that we just see how big and great and powerful You are. But Father, let us never forget that there are others that need to be on this journey. Pray for those that have, maybe they've reached the cross and not made a decision, or maybe they've rejected it. And I just pray that you'd bring them back to the cross. Show them how loving You are, how much they need You. And Father, for our journey, whatever we need, please provide it. We know that You give us all that we need, and so we just ask in faith, believing that we will receive it. And as we go from here, that You would just help us to take Your hope into this lost world. For it is in Your name we pray.